Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 692. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about mountains and temples and a stone forest, the world's largest flower market, and the Tea Horse Road as we go to the Yunnan province of China. Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen, and yet another possibly worst timing episode. We're going back to China today. I'd like to welcome to the show Zach and Leah from Peregrination-Travel.com and the Peregrination YouTube channel, who have come to talk to us about Yunnan, China. Zach and Leah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us. We are so excited to be here.
And I have to get you to explain the term peregrination because it is not a term that I knew, but I like it now that you've told me what it means.
So peregrination is the Latin word for a long or meandering journey, and that's the type of journey we are on. In the past year, we've been to 20 countries, and we are currently in Antarctica.
So we have actually done a show about McMurdo Base in Antarctica. We have never done a show from McMurdo Base in Antarctica, which is oddly enough where we're doing this show from, but we're not talking about Antarctica. You'll have to go listen to that show if you want that. So why are we talking about Yunnan?
Well, Yunnan is such a unique section of China that really has not been the main focus of any tourism in China up until the last 10 years or so. So it's a very unique, separate section of the country that has a lot to offer, and mainly it has a lot of beautiful scenery that is worth seeing and definitely worth going to.
Excellent. And we have done a show about Yunnan before, but it's been at least 6-8 years since we did a show on that region. Can you put this region on a map for us?
So if you are looking at China, it's in the southwestern region. China is a very large country, as we know. Mm-hmm. It's bordering Vietnam and
Laos and on the edge of India.
Okay, we're learning which one of you is the geographer, aren't we? Excellent.
And what kind of itinerary are you going to lay out for us?
It's basically a trip from the big city of Kunming all the way into the mountains and back to Kunming, using many different transportations and seeing things on the ancient tea horse trail, as well as things that are brand new, on the innovative side of China.
Excellent. Well, let's get to it in some detail. You started us in Kunming.
We'll start in Kunming, which you'll probably fly in. We happen to take a bus in from Vietnam,
Okay.
and that worked out pretty well. We walked across the border and took a couple buses. It took about 6 hours from there, but this podcast is focused on the 2-week trip, so you'll probably want to fly into Kunming. Their airport is very large. It's a brand new airport. It's only been there for 6 years. It's one of the 50 busiest airports in the world. You'll have no trouble getting there. They have routes all throughout Southeast Asia, and it's very accessible from many, many different places.
I remember a few years back when China went to build 100 different airports in cities with more than 1 million population, and I don't think I'd heard of any of them. There are a lot of people in China, and there's a lot of new airports that they've built, and so I'm surprised that it's one of the 50 busiest in the world, but only a little.
Yeah. I know Kunming itself, it already has 6 million people, so it's a very large city with lots to offer. But as we said before, it has beautiful scenery. Even though it's such a sprawling city now, they call it the city of eternal spring because the temperature is absolutely beautiful all the time, and so much you can do and see and experience there.
So is it in the lowlands still?
It is 6,000 feet above sea level.
Okay, it is starting to get up there. Okay.
Yeah, and technically in the region, it's in the lowlands, I guess you could say, because on the western side, there's the Tibet region, which is gigantic, the edge of the Himalayas.
But it's really easy to get around the city also. So within the last few years, they've been working on the Kunming Rail Transit, which just recently they completed most of. I think they're still working on a few sections of it. But this makes traveling around the city ridiculously easy. And at most, I think we spent $1 each per trip. Mm-hmm. So it's very affordable, which is definitely a bonus if you're on a budget, or if you're not, it's still good. So when staying in Kunming, we recommend staying closer to the subway line because it makes it so much easier to get around. And what's cool is that it has a lake nearby, and it's not just its city by itself. And you can expect what you expect from all cities, that it has a lot of good food, it has interesting architecture, it has an old town, it has the new sprawling town, but it also has cool, interesting things like the world's biggest flower market in the southern region called the Daonan Flower Market. We took the metro there, and it took about 20 minutes and then another 10-minute walk, but it makes everything so accessible. It's an easy place to travel once you get there. It's a little out of the way to get there, but once you get there, it's really easy to navigate.
Cool. And what are you going to recommend that we do while we're in the city itself?
Well, there's a few things we did, which we really, really enjoyed. The University District is an interesting place to be. If you've never been to China, it's a brand new experience for you, just because Chinese culture, they're so active. So if you go to a regular park, and specifically we're talking about Green Lake Park near the University District, they have so many people out dancing in groups. They're doing their exercise routines. You see families. You are being stopped on the street because they've never seen a Westerner. It's just an interesting thing to experience. Also, the flower market. Annually, they cut and sell 4.1 billion stems. A ridiculous number of flowers. We went there one day. We should have gone when it was during the peak hours, like at 3 a.m., but we got there a little bit later, and it was still just absolutely packed with flowers and women cutting flowers and making flower crowns. There's also a really cool river walk, which is free, and it takes you through the new downtown, or the more sprawling city area with huge high-rises. It's also cool to go to the old town also. It's relatively close to the newer section, but you're able to see the rapid changes in architecture and the standard of living that this city has been going through within the past 30 years. It's so evident that, wow, this city was probably so small 30 years ago, and it has blown up. The fact that they got a huge airport really helps also. And then the metro and the new high-speed rail system. There's a lot going on, and it's important to also touch on the cuisine. So Yunnan cuisine is very interesting. It's much different than the other parts of China. It is said to be generalized as more simple and less spicy, but there are plenty of restaurants that incorporate this Yunnan cuisine. I'm making air quotes right now because it's kind of hard to generalize what it is, because it's made up of 26 mountain tribes, different types of cooking, and it's this huge melting pot of different flavors. Walk around, find some street food, enjoy the city, enjoy the old town, see the new architecture, and enjoy the people around you.
Well, and you say street food. Is there a particular street food that you found there that you enjoyed?
Oh, yeah. So there is an interesting kind of cheese that they loved preparing. Cheese isn't really something you think about when you think of Chinese cuisine.
Not at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's like something that even Chinese people are like, this is weird.
Why are you eating that? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a type of goat cheese. It's different than the goat cheese that you and I are more familiar with. This very leathery, sour, almost hard textural cheese that they prepare in sheets. So they let it lay out in the sun and harden. It almost tastes almost like a provolone because it has a very interesting tangy flavor to it. They'll put it on sticks and they'll grill it. They'll cover it in like a sweet date sauce or sugar over top of it, or it can be sauteed in simple flavors like tomatoes or onions. It's an interesting base flavor for different toppings, and it's everywhere. I mean, you'll find it everywhere. And also rose pastries. And you don't think about eating flowers most of the time, but it's fitting that rose pastries exist in the city of Eternal Spring, that there's the biggest flower market in the country, also in the same city. So rose pastries and strange leathery goat cheese would have to be our top two picks.
And you make it sound so good when you say it that way.
I know. It's very interesting, but it's definitely worth a try.
Well, and I saw that they have the bamboo sticky rice also that I'm used to getting on the other side of the border there in Cambodia, for instance.
We tried that once. I don't think it sparked our interest too much, but it was interesting fishing it out of the bamboo shoot. You'll run into some very different types of street food there than anywhere else.
Anything else we want to see while we're in the city, or are we ready to head outside?
There are a couple attractions outside of the city. The most notable one is definitely the Stone Forest, which is about 60 miles from the city. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and from the East Bus Station, it takes 1.5 hours to get there. But if you took the high-speed train, it only takes 20 minutes. So that's a super easy and convenient way to go on a trip out of the city, be able to take the high-speed train, and come back in all on the same day.
Okay. So, and you mentioned the Stone Forest. I'm looking at pictures of it, and I don't know how to describe this.
It's like the bottom of the cave, or in some places the top of a cave. The ceiling of a cave is turned upside down, and it's jutting out of the ground. And it's been being worked on by nature for the past 36 million years.
So it's like stalagmites, rather, that are outside.
Yes,
exactly.
Out in the open. And I think they're referred to as karst formations. Mm-hmm. They're very interesting to get to, and it's also another affordable attraction. I believe it's $10 per person to enter.
Yes.
So it's a very good and affordable option to get out of the city also.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anything else we want to do just outside the city? I think you said there were two.
There is an actual cave that you can enter. There's also the Yiliang Caverns that you can go through, and that is an easy 3-hour bus ride from Kunming. It's kind of out of the way, but it's a beautiful cavern to go see. It also has karst formations, but when you get there, you're actually going into the cave, and it's also affordable. I think it's also $10 to get into. It sounds difficult to get to, but it's not. If you have some basic Google translation app or something similar, and it takes about 3 hours to actually get through the entire thing. So you enter the cave and you're walking through, and there's also a boat section that you get on, and you're in this
underground river.
Yeah, underground waterway. It takes about an entire day, but it would be a great addition to your stay in Kunming.
Excellent. What's next?
Our next destination is Dali. It's 186 miles northwest of Kunming, and it's about 2 to 2.5 hours on the high-speed rail that is brand new in the region of Yunnan. The high-speed rail is super easy to get to from anywhere in the city. As we said, if you stay by the subway, you can take the subway south to the South Kunming station, which is only 3 years old, and hop on the train right there. It's super easy. And then once you get to Dali, there is a bus that will take you up to the Old Town, which is where many of the hotels are, and it's only $1 to go take this bus up to the Old Town. And then once you're there, most of the hotels are on the outside of the Old Town. And what's really nice about Dali is that the Old Town is removed from where they put the new town. So where all the brand new buildings are, I don't know what they would call it in Chinese, but the new town has a different term. But where all the brand new buildings are and the new city center is being created, is completely separated and isolated from the Old Town. And so you really get to be in nature, surrounded by fields of flowers and different vegetables, and the lake is on one side and the sheer mountain cliff is on the other side of this old town. And it's just a really unique, beautiful place to be.
Cool. And what are we going to do when we're in Dali?
So Dali is the lesser known of the two big tourist cities in Yunnan. The other one is Lijiang, and Dali found that Lijiang was having a big success in the tourism industry with their advertising and being super close to the Himalayas. So Dali retransformed how they did things and are now building new hotels. Everything is popping up there, and it's a better place, in our opinion, to go than Lijiang because it's smaller and more intimate, and you don't get the hordes and the crowds of people going to see the Himalayas. You get a more intimate experience in the scenic area.
And that's not to say that it's less beautiful
Yes.
at all, because the Old Town is literally situated between a beautiful lake and mountains. So while you're there, of course, you want to check out the Old Town because it's absolutely beautiful. There are parts of it that are a little bit more commercialized, but that's to be expected with any city that is experiencing a boom in tourism.
Mm-hmm.
But we really recommend staying close to the Old Town and utilizing the scenery around it. So renting a bike and then taking it to Eri Lake is right there, and seeing how people live, because they have more modern structures that are right on the waterfront. And while we were there in May of 2019, they were beginning to tear down those structures so that they could utilize the lake more and bring tourism to it so that people can really enjoy the lake instead of live right on it. And then on the other side of the city is the Kangshan Mountain, which is a World Heritage UNESCO Geopark. It is very easy to access. We actually walked there from where we stayed. It took about 10 minutes. And from there, you can either go hiking up the mountain to a large trail at the top, which is absolutely spectacular. It's got amazing views. Or if you aren't up for a hike, they have a cable car system that will take you all the way to the top. Or you could rent a mule to take you all the way to the top. So it depends on what kind of level you're at with experiencing a mountain. But we decided to hike the entire thing. And man, was that a workout. It was probably 2,000 steps to the top. And we did every single one while being passed by old Chinese men that probably do this hike every single day. And they were racing up to the top, and we were struggling so hard. It's a fun place to get out. I mean, you're out of the city already, but you're really getting yourself out into nature, and it's so close to where you're staying. That's really the beauty of Dali.
Excellent. Anything else you want to do in Dali?
I will say we talked about street food in Kunming, but Dali street food really shines. Everything's really clean and organized, and it's really easy to read menus. The street food in Dali is really close together because you're in the tourist section, whereas if you're in Kunming, it's more difficult to find all these dishes because they're far away from each other. So the best place to do a food tour, if you will, would be in Dali, where all the street food is very close together.
Okay. I've been Googling pointlessly trying to figure out what the name of the town means, because I know Da is big and Li, I don't, closest I can get is reason, but I'm sure I am mistranslating that, so I'm not sure where.
Unfortunately, we don't know the answer to that either.
I can tell you that the pronunciation is Dali. That's as far as I got. Excellent. Do we want to do anything else in Dali before we head out?
I don't think so. I think that's probably it.
Okay, where to next?
Next, we are going to Shashi, which is a 3-hour bus ride from Dali. This is really unheard of for most people on this route. It's not on the train line at all. You take a bus to another city and then get a bus to Shashi. And so it is kind of difficult to get to. But once you're there, you're really immersed into a different world. It was on the ancient Tea Horse Road, and is also said to be one of the birthplaces of tea.
It's definitely a place if you're trying to escape tourism. It's such a quaint little town that is so removed from the main avenue of tourism that goes through this region. And it feels so quaint and small while you're there. And being Westerners, we were met with really, really nice people. Smiles from two specific mountain tribes. They are the home of the Bai and the Yi people. And it's a completely different experience because you are surrounded by this mountain range, but you're in a valley with a flowing river and fields of rice. And you see women and men working out in these rice fields, and you get a more sense of what it is to live in a Chinese village, what that used to be. And then you can understand, wow, there's such a shift in the economic situation for most households. Chinese middle class is definitely rising. And so to see such a different point of view, so you're in Kunming and you're seeing people who live in the city and people who are gaining more wealth and more prosperity, then you reach to these farther out cities like Dali and Lijiang, and you're seeing there's a lot of tourism that's coming to the region. Then you go out to Shashi, and you're like, oh my gosh, there are people who still live this way. And it's such a foreign concept, I think, for a lot of North Americans or Westerners, that people still are farming with their hands. There's no big machinery. It's all back-breaking work, and you get to see that up close and personal.
And with your hands, I'm assuming you mean they have hand tools like hoes and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not a farming expert, but yes.
That's okay. We were guessing that at this point.
It also has some scenery to be explored. So it has the Shibushan Mountain. And what's interesting about this trail, if you go up the Shibushan Mountain Trail, is that you'll find a Buddhist temple at the top. And so if you're not familiar, China doesn't really host many religions. There's no official religion of China. I don't think there ever really has been. But because this town is situated on the Tea Horse Road, it's interesting to see that there's a Buddhist temple there, just because you realize, wow, this was definitely like a direct avenue of different cultures coming to and from China, selling different goods and things and sharing different religions. And it's a very slow-paced type of town, and it is absolutely fantastic. It is not to be missed. Even though it's a little bit out of the way, it is probably our most favorite stop on our Yunnan trip, because it's otherworldly. It's something you've never experienced before.
You feel like you're in a community of people. Everyone is happy to see you. They're accepting. You really are truly living in a village, so there's not a high-rise hotel. You're in someone's house, and it's truly an immersive experience into this different world.
Yeah.
Well, you'd mentioned the Tea Horse Road, and this was something I was not familiar with, but some said think of it like the Southern Silk Road, connecting China and South Asia. So going from Sichuan and Yunnan and Tibet down into some of what are now the neighboring countries. Interesting.
It was really interesting to see that there. It was our first trip to China, and we thought tea was going to be everywhere, and then it was. So we kind of expected that. And then the more we read into it and the more we talked to people, they were like, no, there's a lot of tea here because this is where it's from. So there's abundance of tea shops in Dali and Lijiang and in Shashi, because you're expected to go in there, you sit down, and you can sample a dozen different teas before picking out the one that you really like and taking it with you back home.
Also to be said about Shashi, if you do some research ahead of time, there are some groups that will take you out on the Tea and Horse Road to do hiking excursions. We did not do that, but it was because we were a little bit strapped for time, but it's definitely an option. A little bit of additional research would be required, and there are tour guides out there, I think locals, that will take you out on the Tea Horse Road to explore a little bit further, which I think is really cool.
Now, how does one get strapped for time on a long and meandering journey?
We planned enough days. Let me say that. We had enough days. This was Leah's first time getting sick on the trip. I got sick in Vietnam
Okay.
2 weeks before she did. But this was her first time. She was down for about 3 days.
Yeah, unfortunate, but it happened. So yeah, a few days were taken away.
Got it. I get that.
Yeah. When you're down, you're really down.
Okay. Where do we want to go after Shaxi?
The next place we are going is Lijiang, and we're taking a bus there. It's going to take about 3 hours to get there, and once you arrive here, you are in the mountains. I mean, it's so cool because you come onto a highway, you go through a tunnel, and then all of a sudden you're in this gigantic valley, and you look to your left, and there's beautiful snow mountains. Wherever you are in the city, it's breathtaking.
So the old town itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, like the entire thing. And it is absolutely massive. If you were to walk from one side to the other, it would probably take you 45 minutes to an hour just to walk across it.
Wow, okay.
The old town, yeah. And that's, I mean, there's an entire city around this old town.
Right, sure.
Also,
yeah.
so it's a huge place. Lijiang is a huge place. But it is a big tourist town because I think the word is out that it is an absolutely beautiful place to be.
Well, and you mentioned that Dali was your favorite of the two of them.
Correct.
Yes.
And that is because Lijiang is so...
Discovered.
Yes, it's less discovered. It's well, no, it's more discovered. It's definitely, the word is out that it is a beautiful place to experience. So Jade Dragon Snow Mountain is situated maybe an hour's ride, and it's a big tourist attraction. A lot of people go there. You'll be walking through the old streets of Lijiang, and you have this perfect view of this snow-capped peak that is 14,000 feet above sea level. It's absolutely gorgeous, and you can take excursions up there. It is a little bit pricier to do that, so we opted out of exploring Jade Dragon Snow Mountain, although we were able to witness it from the town. But what is really cool about Lijiang is the Tiger Leaping Gorge Trail that is 2 hours bus ride away from the city. And that is actually how we spent most of our time in Lijiang, other than getting lost in the massive old town that is situated there.
All the back alleys.
Well, and you mentioned the tiger. Could you go into more detail on the Tiger Leaping Trail?
Yes,
Absolutely.
We will go into that now.
So Tiger Leaping Gorge.
Tiger Leaping Gorge, thank you.
Yeah. Tiger Leaping Gorge is definitely something you want to check out while you're there. If you're able to do a through hike, if you have the physical capabilities to do that type of thing, definitely do it. Do not skip it. It's so easy to take a bus from Lijiang to the town of Zhaotou. And from there, you get off the bus, you buy a ticket. They know exactly why you're there. If you're a Westerner, they'll take you to a ticket office so that you can get an entry pass. Considered it's its own park. So you get an entry pass, which is very affordable, and then the bus will literally drop you off right in front of the trail. So you're kind of in this very sleepy little town that is, at this moment, there's a lot of construction in because they were building a bridge from one side of the gorge to the other. So it was a little dusty when we were there, and I don't think as cute as it probably would have been. But from that town, you just start hiking up this huge mountain. And so you're hiking, and most people usually do Tiger Leaping Gorge over the course of 3 days and 2 nights. And there are little towns along the trail so that you can sleep in guest houses overnight. Okay. So it's not camping out. You're spending maybe 5 hours hiking up and down this ridge along the gorge, and then you'll get to this sleepy little town where there are guest houses for rent. They're pretty affordable too. We spent maybe $20 US per night. And so there's 3 sections. There's one that's pretty much up the ridge. You're going up and up and up. And then there's the 28 Bends section, which is a very treacherous section. I practically died going up this section. I know you can't see us, but Zach is in much better shape than I am. So he helped me up the 28 Bends. And it's really 28 switchbacks up this huge gorge.
Well, and you're at altitude too. I'm seeing you're like 3 miles up or something.
Exactly. So I was trying not to give myself too hard of a time.
We were also, because she was sick before, we were also doing this hike in 2 days. So we did the climb and the 28 Bends in the same day. So when she says it was hard, that's because that was the second part of the long hike that we had on the first day. But if you were to stay the 3 days, 2 nights, it wouldn't be that strenuous because you would walk the 28 Bends. I think it's only 4 miles total. So if you give yourself 5 hours to do that and stop and look at the beautiful scenery along the way, then you could really enjoy that hike.
Yeah, I was probably a little dehydrated, which probably didn't help.
And
So what I'm seeing that the whole out and back is about 13.7 miles and 3,280 feet of elevation gain.
That sounds about right.
But at elevation, you had to add on to that 12,000 feet or something like that.
Yes.
They definitely have had years and years of people going on this trail. So what is really nice is that because it's out and back, but you don't have to walk back. So
Okay.
the last guest house on the trail one of them is Tina's guest house. And that's usually where most people stay the night. And so they realize that, wow, we have a lot of foreigners hiking this gorge, and we should give a service to bus people back all the way back to Lijiang. So at 3:30 p.m. every day, there is a bus or two buses, depending on how many people have hiked that day and are needing a ride back. They will bus you all the way back to Lijiang, which is an adventure in itself because you are driving on this very narrow road, what seems so far above the gorge, and it is very steep on the side. It was thrilling, really, to get a ride back in this bus back through the gorge. So definitely a highlight of our trip. You got to meet a lot of people along the way who were doing the same thing that you were doing at the time. We were back there in May, so we ran into a lot of Australians who were hiking the gorge at the same time we were. So it's cool because you get to interact with people who are running these guest houses, and you get to understand their families have been here for generations, and this is a great way for them to stay in the town that they grew up in, just because now that they have a way of making money by operating these guest houses. But then you get to experience, oh, hey, you're from Australia. Oh my gosh, we're from the United States. This is crazy that we're here at the same time. What's your story? And you get to really meet people along the way, which is really, really interesting.
Sure. Well, and once you add a couple Australians, you have a party too. So
Yeah.
You really do. We saw many Australians.
Yeah.
Sounds like very strenuous hiking, but I want to say it isn't that crazy if you do it in 3 days. And the guest houses have restaurants and bottles of water. We were thinking that we were going to have to bring water purifiers and that we're going to have a camp stove with us. And so when we say hiking, it's walking and then staying in hotels because they have everything you would need.
okay, got it. So you're not doing the full pack and tent and those sort of things.
No,
not at all.
it's not quite glamping, but it's better than just regular hiking, camping.
Got it. Anything else you want to do in the Lijiang area?
Yes. So then back to Lijiang. We really like Lijiang because it is so big, and so you can walk aimlessly for days. I mean, we did that for 2 days, and we didn't even see the whole old town. It was, let's go here, and this fruit looks good, and let's try this goat cheese, and what about this tea shop? And there's so many things to see and sit and marvel at Jade Snow Dragon Mountain. Basically, get lost in the city, immerse yourself in the city, and there's actually a street there called Foreigner Street, and it's where a lot of Chinese people come to take pictures with Westerners. The funny thing is, Westerners don't even know they're walking on this street. It's the main boulevard of the town, but people that live in China are really excited to take pictures with you. And they didn't take too many pictures with me, but once they saw Leah and her blonde hair, she was asked all the time, all selfies here, selfies there, and it was funny to be a celebrity with people that didn't even know you.
They didn't even ask sometimes. It was they were taking a selfie of themselves, and then all of a sudden you're also in the frame. So you're just like, hey, you taking my picture? What's going on?
Once you're in Lijiang, look out for Foreigner Street because it's truly a crazy place to be.
They also have a really good nightlife scene there, too. Mm-hmm. So if that's something that you're interested in, we're not really much of the nightlife people.
Partiers, yeah.
Yeah, we're the early to bed, early to rise type. But they have an entire bar section of the city that is really hopping at night. So if that's something you're into, it's definitely available there.
Yeah, it's right in the middle of the old city, and it's really cool because it's on one of the streams that runs right through the city. So once you get too much of the loud music inside, you can come out, and there's a babbling brook right outside, and then you can go into your next establishment. Yeah, it's really in a nice spot.
I mean, we completely understand why Lijiang is so popular.
Yes.
Because it's absolutely spectacularly beautiful. And I think it's Naxi or Nashi. That's their primary mountain people that are up there.
Okay.
And the town, it looks different in little ways than Dali's old town because it's a different style of architecture. It's a little different. If you pay close attention, like that kind of thing.
We should add that in Dolly, we kind of missed this part. They have the Bai people there, which really like the color white. And before going to China, we didn't know we were going to find these tribal groups. We thought it was all one Han race, but Chinese race. But going to Yunnan, we really got to see this, and people dressed in their traditional clothing. And every single night when we were in Dali, they had a dancing class where it's custom in China to go and work out at the end of the day and dance. So these are all over the country, but this one in particular, they happen to wear their traditional tribal clothing. And every day they would go dance for an hour, and people that were walking down the street would either stop and dance with them or watch them dance. And that was one of the highlights of our day, was going and watching these middle-aged Chinese women and men dance in their tribal uniforms, their outfits, to this crazy Chinese pop music. And it was really fun to join in. And that could also be why Dali was our favorite city, because those tribal dances are really fun.
Yeah, it was definitely a highlight of every day that we were there.
But yeah, Lijiang has a little bit of a different version where they dance around a campfire that is policed so that it doesn't get too big, but they're just burning wood in the middle of the square, and you do a dance where you're holding everyone's arms and you kick. And it's very relaxed compared to the one in Dali, but it's easy to join in and really be part of the community.
Okay. And I don't know where we are in your itinerary. I think we're getting to the end of it.
Yes, and so from Lijiang, you can take the high-speed rail back into Kunming, and from the south train station, you can subway back to your hotel. I would recommend staying one night for the time difference, and then going straight. You can go from your hotel, subway to the airport, and be back to where you came from.
Now, I'm curious, you say this was your first trip to China, and for many people, first trip is Shanghai or Xi'an or Beijing, one of the more typical places. Why did you choose Yunnan first?
The Himalayas were calling us. We really wanted to go to China, and when we left on our 6-month trip, the one that we just got back from, it was kind of an option, and then we really started thinking about going to the mountains, because we'd been city hopping for most of our trip and we really wanted to be immersed in nature.
Okay.
And it was basically accessibility was the reason we went to Yunnan, because we were already in Hanoi, so we took a bus from Hanoi up to the border, then crossed the border and went in. So it was our location was why.
Convenience, and also that we had heard and researched enough that we realized that like Yunnan isn't as explored as other regions of China, and that could be good content also for our YouTube channel to introduce a lot of Americans to what they're missing.
Yes, and how easy it is to travel in some place that is so foreign to so many people.
You have fewer Starbucks than you'll find in Shanghai. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then working with the VPN and around the internet and really being.
Well, you mentioned the VPN, so you're talking about the Great Firewall of China, which blocks a fair amount of things. Facebook, for instance. I don't even know if it blocks Amateur Traveler. I've forgotten to check, I think, when I've been in China. But it might. I don't really know. But it certainly blocks a number of things. And obviously it blocks specific sites that also talk about things that are politically sensitive in China. Certain terms you certainly wouldn't expect to be able to Google and get the same kind of results that you would get here, not only because of the language barrier. But you were using a VPN, you say, that was still allowing you to access things like Facebook.
Google is even banned in China. So we learned before that a VPN was necessary, and if you get it when you're out of the country, then you can bring it into the country. So Chinese citizens that are lucky enough to get a passport that leave can actually obtain that VPN and use it until that device is gone. But that really helped us out when we were in China with translating and using Google Maps to work our way through the country and figure out how we were going to eat. That was probably the hardest part, was figuring out how to eat. So when we first got there, Leah was pointing to different vegetables. They would literally take Leah in the kitchen. She would get a little hat on. She would go in the kitchen, and no one knew what she was saying, but she was able to point at raw vegetables and meat, and they would learn that she wanted corn and tomatoes and chicken, and that's how they were going to make her dinner that night.
Yeah, it's worth saying and mentioning that there are not many English-speaking people in the Yunnan region. So it is very important to download Google Translate or any other translating app. We used Google Translate. It was pretty simple to use. Mm-hmm. And also maybe downloading the Chinese keyboard on your phone before it, so that if you're having trouble communicating, you can switch your keyboard to Chinese letters that they could try and communicate also on your app, your translation app.
So that they could type something in and then you could translate it and find out what they were talking about, because they may not know the pinyin for it or the Chinese with Western characters. Got it.
Correct. Yeah. Definitely a big pro tip, if you will. We figured out how to easily communicate what we wanted in restaurants. This took a bit of preparation before we left our hotel room. So we figured out where we wanted to eat, probably by walking by a place or using Google Maps. And so on Google Maps, if you're looking at a restaurant, like you see the little character and you press on the restaurant, there's usually a link to a Chinese Yelp type app called Dion Ping. Yes, this is
pictures.
Very useful. So on Dion Ping, it'll bring up that same restaurant, and then it'll have the top 10 dishes of that entire menu. A game we liked to play was choosing the top 3 things on the menu, taking a screenshot of those, because it's all in Chinese letters.
Sure.
You could not understand Dion Ping whatsoever, but there was always a picture involved. So we're like, oh man, that looks really good. Let's get that. I have no idea what this is. Let's get this. So we would screenshot all of these menu items on Dion Ping and show the restaurant these screenshots on our phone. And they were, most of the time, really delighted that we had done this extra preparation so that it was an easier communication process between us and them, and also make sure we were getting what we wanted. That's definitely so funny that you do all this extra work to communicate, but it made everything really funny, just because you're in a situation where you're like, I have no idea what you're saying, and they're in a situation that they're saying the exact same thing. I have no idea what they're saying to me, and then everybody starts giggling. So it's really funny. But if you use these very basic apps, I mean, it's not like we had the most specialized translation app with us. It was basic Google translation, but it's all very doable, especially if you have a VPN.
Excellent. Any other tips that you would have for travel in China as first-timers?
Especially if you go into Kunming, the subway from the airport into the city is in English and in Chinese. But once you get into the city, it's just in Chinese. So getting a map at the airport of the subway is an important thing. But also when you go to these buses or train stations we're telling you about, it's easiest to use the Translate app to get the Chinese characters of the city you're going to. So that way when you go to the representative, you can show them those Chinese characters, and there's no words that need to be said. They give you the amount, you give them the payment, and then it's that easy. And you go on your way. And then you show the name of the city to the people in the station, and they show you where to go. But obtaining that before you leave.
Your hotel room, even. So that you also have a awareness of where you're actually going. It's not putting you on a bus to a town that you're not meaning to go to.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, and maps are sometimes a way to do that as well. If you have a map and can point out to them where you want to go. Charades work sometimes as well.
Charades work, yes.
Excellent. Well, let's get to some of our wrap-up questions. And of all the places you went in Yunnan, if I told you were standing in front of the prettiest place, where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Tiger Leaping Gorge.
Jade Snow Dragon Mountain.
Okay.
It is the most difficult to get to, but it is worth the trouble of getting there.
Yes.
To see the beautiful mountains, snow-capped. They're so dramatic. The clouds roll in, they roll back out. You feel like you're in a Nat Geo movie almost.
Yes. That's a good description. Yes, it is.
Excellent. And one thing that makes you laugh and say only in Yunnan.
The dancing women?
The dancing women are trying to communicate with anyone.
I would say the dancing women, because it was such a shock, because we saw many people dancing in the city to current pop songs, and these women pulled out songs from the 60s that we hadn't heard since our parents were playing them, and we're like, how did they get these songs, let alone choreograph this to dance that's the same every night in and out? So we actually filmed some of it, and we would go back and watch that film and try to rehearse those dance moves. To this day, we do that. Yeah. So yes, when I'm laughing only, it's like we saw people dancing in many different countries, but for some reason, the women in Dolly just really stuck to us because we watched them for an hour a day.
Excellent. Our guests again have been Zach and Leah from peregrination-travel.com and the Peregrination YouTube channel. And Zach and Leah, if we wanted to send people to your best content, either on either channel, blog on the YouTube channel for Yunnan, where are we going to send them to?
We're going to send them to our China playlist, which right now is only Yunnan. We're planning another trip to China later this year, but right now that's only Yunnan, and that's our most popular playlist. It's 10 videos of what we did, taking you to the flower market, Kunming, Dali, Shashi, and Tiger Leaping Gorge. So it has all of that content that we just talked about on there in video format, and so you can really see and hear those places.
Excellent, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes that people can get. Zach and Leah, thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your newfound love for China.
Oh, yes. We are planning to go back because it was just an amazing experience.
Thank you so much for having us on, Chris. We really appreciate it.
In news of the community, I'm still trying to organize a launch for the Patreon for Amateur Traveler. A Patreon is a way where you can support the show, and it's something that a lot of different podcasts are doing with a monthly commitment. And I really haven't gotten my launch together yet, and so I'd like to thank Nathan and Tom, who have already signed up to support the show, even though I didn't really feel I had launched it yet, but they went to patreon.com/amateur traveler. And so thanks for the first 2 patrons of Amateur Traveler. And I'm still trying to figure out if there are more things I can offer as one of the reasons that I feel like I haven't quite launched it. I wonder if anybody would be interested in doing a possible Amateur Traveler meetup in the Atlanta area. I know we have some listeners there, even some former guests from that area. I will be in that area over Memorial Day weekend for a wedding, and we'll be spending some time in the area. If you're interested, send me an email to host@amateurtraveler.com or put something on the Facebook group, facebook.com/amateurtraveler. Oh, and we're doing our final round of voting starting this weekend and going into the next week or two for where we're going to go in 2021. You can go to amateurtraveler.com/trips to see where. And so far, in the first round of voting, there are some surprises. And I won't tell you more than that. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more cathedral. I got to sit in one more